Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Okay, be they were talking about two music documentaries slash concert films. What is everybody's favorite music docs and or concert films? Or if there's some movies like this, they are both music films and concert films, or music docs and concert films. I got a good old list here. The Decline of Western Civilization, all those movies, pretty amazing. Amy, the Amy Winehouse music doc is really great. MIA had a documentary a few years ago that's really good. Montage of Heck, of course.
Yeah, that one's great.
The Punk Singer about Kathleen Hanna is really great. The Defiant Ones, the miniseries about Interscope is pretty good, actually. And, of course, the Metallica Some Kind of Monster, of course. Really great stuff. There's a few that I really want to check out. There's one called 1991, The Year Punk Broke, which is also, like, I think it came out, like, a year later, so it's of the time. And then 95, 96 documentary about grunge called Hype that I want to check out, but yeah.
Those are a few. You also really liked the Woodstock 99 documentary, or at least, I don't know if you liked it, but, like, you were, like, fascinated by it. That came out a couple years ago, right?
I think that was it last year?
Yeah, it was last
year. I don't know. The more I've thought about it, the more I fucking hate that documentary and everything it stands for.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty misguided and messy, and like especially like the whole thing with Fred Durst, where they're like, it wasn't his fault, except it kind of was, and I'm just like, what's your thesis here? I don't know, like, what you're trying to say. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. It's just like I watched it and I was amazed by it, but mostly because it had so much footage I've never seen before, and that was amazing. And then I was like, oh yeah, people talking. Oh yeah, that's great. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, all right, I've read people's reviews that are talking about how bad this is, and I was like, let me really hone in on the interviews, and boy howdy, they are some old ass people. They're just like, so they went up there and they were playing guitars and screaming the lyrics, and people just thought this was a good idea, apparently. And they were just like, oh, thankfully 3 months later Coachella was invented and everything was good. And I was just like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, ugh. I can't stand the people that they got that were just like, well, you got people playing heavy music. Do you expect them not to, like, assault women? I'm like,
Not to mention they would just, like, lump in footage of various bands with various different, like, you know, fan bases. Like, they did Rage Against the Machine, and we're talking about toxicity of, like, everything. And I'm just like, I'm not saying that there aren't toxic Rage Against the Machine fans, but it's like, you do realize Rage Against the Machine is, like, politically on a completely different level than, like, a ton of these other bands that you're talking about, and just lumping them in with, I don't know, The Offspring, actually, I think, was one of the few bands where they talked about where they were actually stood up for, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe I shouldn't use that one, but, like, I don't know.
Yeah, The Offspring was just like, I'm seeing a lot of women crowd surfing, and I don't think that gives men the right to grope them and whatnot. And then they were probably just like, this is a song about how black people and white people should be separated. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like when I revisit that, it's gonna be even worse. But thankfully, there's like a docu-series coming out on Netflix sometime soon about it, so hopefully that's, you know, better. Hopefully they get, you know, people that aren't like Pitchfork writers to talk about it, because
it makes me think of when the two Firefest documentaries came out, like, and like there was like one people this one's pretty good, and then there was one people like, this fucking sucks, like the one that like people just like absolutely hated. You had to be like, watch this one, don't watch this one. It was
I didn't watch either of those.
Yeah, I didn't either, because people talked about it enough. I was like, okay, well, I don't need to watch it anymore. Yeah. That's good.
I like a little-known concert film called Stop Making Sense. I don't think many people have seen that one, though. I mean...
Oh, directed by Ted Demme, yeah. Oh.
No, it's only one of the most joyous cinematic experiences you'll ever have.
Have you seen the David Byrne American...
Utopia? Yes, it's great. Yeah, Spike Lee directed that one.
That's right. I need to watch that.
That's very good.
Shut Up and Play the Hits, LCD Sound System's doc/concert film is really great. And, of course, Prince's Sign of the Times is great.
Sign of the Times is up there with Stop Making Sense, is possibly my favorite concert film of all time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's my favorite, definitely. But documentary, what would be my favorite? It would probably be some kind of monster or any of the decline of Western civilization. I'm leaning towards the second one where they're talking about hair metal bands of the 80s. That one's like actually funny. Then the third one is like barely about music. It's actually just depressing.
Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck you mentioned. I love that one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that at Sundance when I was very sleep deprived and like couldn't stop crying for like the last half hour, where it gets into some especially rough footage of him with Courtney Love just high on heroin, raising raising their daughter.
Yeah,
and it's just raising Frances Bean Cobain, and it's just like so devastating.
Bryden, anything to contribute?
I'm pretty like woefully undereducated on music docs and concert films in general. I feel like I'm just kind of all over the place with like music knowledge in general. But yeah, Stop Making Sense is great. I got to see that at the Hot Docs Cinema in Toronto a few years ago after Demi's passing, and that was really great, especially because the crowd was super amped up. I saw it in like the balcony, and there was like someone who was like doing laps like around like around the aisles, like dancing too. I think it was like during wartime that was playing. Although there was one guy who was like dancing like dangerously close to the balcony, and some people were like kind of like looking like, is this guy about to like topple off the balcony? He was fine. Nothing happened, but it was like just...
Oh, good.
Yeah. I saw it at the Coolidge, and people got on the stage where the screen was, and my boss had to come kick everyone off during the last song. We were just like, okay, Jesus Christ. Like, we let you dance in the aisles, but fuck off. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Can't ruin the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome to see everyone having fun, but then it was just like, okay, that's a step too far, guys. Take it down. Like, Justin Timberlake and the Tennessee Kids. I don't even like Justin Timberlake. That's a great music concert.
That might be my big hurdle with that movie is like I just didn't really like the songs as much. But like, and also I just found it, I don't know, I found like the performances just kind of samey after a bit. But like, whereas like Stop Making Sense, I felt like there was like a lot of different like changing up of like all the get-ups that, you know, David Byrne and his band get into, and also the way Demi like films it like very dynamically with all like the close-ups and like the pans as like, you know, people are like just like getting amped up during the crowd or during the performances. Whereas I don't know, I just don't remember that one being quite as dynamic. But then it could be just I know some people don't like Talking Heads and don't like Stop Making Sense for that reason. So like that's, you know, I guess that's my argument with JT.
I love JT and the album that he's touring for, so I was a mark for that.
Sure. I like
his last album though. No,
I like a couple of his songs. I'm not like a hater or whatever, but it's yeah.
I think if any of you seen, I guess Kevin, you just kind of answered this question, but like music documentaries you were really looking forward to, and then they turned out to be major disappointments. I guess it's not fair of me to pick on this one because it's kind of one that nobody's seen. But Heaven Adores You, which is all about Elliott Smith. I went in there just so amped, and then it's just a lot of shots of like Oregon while Elliott Smith songs play, and people talk about how great he is, and I'm just like, yeah, I know, that's why I'm here, but like, what else are you gonna add? Like, I haven't learned anything I don't know before. And then it's not good. It was a bummer.
Yeah, there's one, I'm looking it up right here. It's about Betty Davis. It's called Betty, They Say I'm Different. And yeah, they had like almost no footage they could show. And also it was just, it's only like 54 minutes, and it just felt really, there was like nothing there, honestly. Like there was like a, I think Mike Judge did like something called like Tales from the Bus or something like that, and it was just all people talking about musicians they've been around, and they did one on Betty Davis, and I was just like, how is this better than a full-blown documentary about her? But there's that one, and then Arcade Fire had a documentary a few years ago that I watched, and I was like big into Arcade Fire at the time, and even then I was like, this is really bad.
Did Terry Gilliam direct that Arcade Fire one? I can't remember if he was involved with
I think it's called The Reflector Tapes. Let me see. Khalil Joseph.
Never mind. So not Terry Gilliam, in other words.
No.
Okay, never mind.
No, but yeah, it's really rough. I remember that. But yeah, that's it. It's really the only, I mean, most documentaries are at the worst fine, and at best mostly fine too. Yeah. So it's really hard to find a bad one.
Gimme Shelter is also great. Did we mention that one yet? I don't think
no.
Yeah, that one's rough because, you know, deals with the actual murder at the end of that movie, but it is a fascinating document that's very, you know, important culturally.
I do want to watch what's the other documentary that they like shelved because they were like, we look like shit because of this. What is it called? Cocksucker Blues,
Yes,
right?
that's supposed to be really good.
Yeah. I need to watch that.
The one I can think of is like Oasis Supersonic, which I watched at the beginning of the pandemic, and that one's like I honestly can't even remember that much formally speaking. Although like there is like a lot of good like behind the scenes trash talk, and like I like a lot of Oasis songs. Although I agree with Brian Talrico from RogerEbert.com. He reviewed it and said the movie like is kind of limited in scope and how like it just covers the first 2 albums and then doesn't cover anything else. And it's like watching the movie, you'd think that Oasis broke up after 2 albums. In fact, they released more albums after that. It's like the movie just doesn't talk about it. It's like, oh, that would be interesting, but I guess you can't cover everything.
Kind of like how Bohemian Rhapsody implied that Freddie Mercury died of AIDS after that one concert when he went on to do like years and years of music afterwards.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess that's similar, except Bohemian Rhapsody, way worse movie.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah. There's 2 docs that I'm just now remembering. Beats, Rhymes, and Life, the Tribe Called Quest documentary is really great.
I haven't seen that one.
It's really great. And then one called Our Vinyl Weighs a Ton, which is all about Stone's Throw. So it's talking all about Jay Dilla and Mad Villain and MF Doom. That one's really good. So yeah, I remembered those. So I've seen quite a few music docs. But the thing is, most of them are fine. Very rarely do they jump above like being just fine.
Well, that's the thing is like, I mean, I wonder sometimes when I like a documentary, it's like, do I like the subject or do I like the subject and the filmmaking? And it's like, but I think as I've gotten older, I find that like, even if it's like a subject I'm really interested in, if it's a badly made documentary, I will notice and it will like downgrade my rating of it. Like I remember, this isn't related to music, but I watched like a Richard Linklater documentary like a few years ago, and it was like, what
is it, 21 years?
Exactly, yeah. And I watched it, I'm like, I love this guy's movies. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. This is like a terrible documentary, though, where it's just like, I don't get the sense of any thesis. The interviews aren't shot interestingly. If I recall correctly, there's a lot of like goofy sound effects, and there might even be animation in there. I don't know. It's fucking bad, though. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe you made me like bored by a documentary about one of my favorite filmmakers. That's truly
I think I heard it was like a bad documentary that would be on like the special features on a DVD kind of doc, like it's that bad.
Yeah,
but I think it was made for like Amazon, right?
Was
something
it
like that?
I watched it on Hoopla, if I'm not mistaken, but that's not to say that Hoopla made the movie. But,
I think in terms of like
Hoopla original,
in terms of like the worst documentaries I've ever seen, Religulous, the fucking Bill Maher one.
Did you see that?
Reprehensibly bad.
That was something that we almost watched in one of my faith and cultures classes in high school.
It's atrocious. It's just so awful on so many levels.
Did you see that video going around? I think it was the other day, where it was like John Candy was introducing like promising young comedians at like some show, and he was like, "Oh, we're introducing a bunch of great talent. This young comedian Bill Maher got his start." Whatever, and people were just like, "Oh no."
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. If only we knew.
Welcome to Almost Major, a podcast where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. We have a double build today. We are talking about Buena Vista Social Club from 1999 and Standing in the Shadows of Motown from 2002. Both put out by Artisan. This is our last month of Artisan films. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And in the order of releasing, we're going to be talking about Buena Vista Social Club from 1999. Premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival in February 1999, and then released in the U.S. June 4th, 1999. It opened in 15 theaters, maxed out at 74 theaters. It had a budget of $8 million, opening weekend of $127,000, a domestic gross of $6.9 million, and an overall gross of $19.8 million. For a documentary, that's pretty insane. I mean, it's not Fahrenheit 9/11, but I mean, not all docs are Fahrenheit 9/11.
Is it Fahrenheit 9/11 or Fahrenheit 11/9?
Oh no! Have you seen that, Charlie? Have you seen that?
Fahrenheit 11/9? No, but I did. I must have told you about AOC at our came to our theater for that, right?
No.
Oh, I didn't mention this?
No.
Holy shit. Yeah, AOC came. I never saw the movie. I don't know why, but I was like I was, being shy, even though I love her, and was just like, yeah, I'll just, do my job. And I was like cleaning the popper, and all of a sudden I hear, thank you so much. And I turn around and AOC's just smiling at me. And I was just like, oh, no, thank you. Like, I was just like, she had no reason to come over to me. She had no reason at all. She was just thanking everyone on her way out. Also, I was mentioning this the other day with Bryden, but one of our former bar manager, who's a fucking idiot, and he doesn't work at the theater anymore, and he'll never find this, played the Russian anthem as AOC walked by, and did not get fired for it.
Huh. Neat.
And we all were like, what the fuck is your problem? By the way, I guess we haven't really gotten into politics on the show, but yeah, we are left-leaning people. So, or at least I am. Very much
speak
so.
for yourself. I'm a libertarian. No, I'm kidding. This movie surprisingly stayed in theaters for 35 weeks, up until January 28th, 2000. Top 5 films the weekend it came out: Star Wars Episode 1, Notting Hill, Instinct, The Mummy, and Entrapment. I haven't seen Instinct or an Entrapment, and I think that's for the best.
Neither have I.
Yeah. Isn't Instinct where Anthony Hopkins thinks he's like a monkey or something?
I
believe so. Directed by John Turteltaub of While You Were Sleeping and National Treasure, if I'm not
mistaken.
Okay. Yeah. I would assume it's just altered states, but boring, where he doesn't turn into an ape, but it's Anthony Hopkins just, like, I haven't seen this movie. I have no idea. Does anyone even fucking remember this movie?
I remember the poster, that's about it. I think I remember the trailer.
I'm looking at the poster right now. It's a black and white photo of Anthony Hopkins. His eye is blue, and then the rest of his face is blurry.
What?
I don't think... Do you think Anthony Hopkins remembers this movie?
No. No, 1000% no.
Who else? Be kind of hysterical.
Is it Cuba Gooding Jr. in it?
Exactly.
Right. This was number 3. Anyways, Entrapment, isn't that the movie that only exists as a GIF? Okay.
Yep. For sliding under the lasers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Number 1 song in the US this week is Livin' La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin, Better Times. Number 1 song in Canada this week is If You Had My Love by Jennifer Lopez. Who wins, US or Canada? I'm going with US.
I don't really know either of those songs. So.
Oh, man.
You don't know Livin' La Vida Loca?
I remember. Here's how I remember this. I remember my brother did a science project in
I love this
in elementary school where he tested to see how plant growth would respond to different types of music being played. And I remember he played like a CD of like Grammy hits or whatever, and it included Ricky Martin. So I remember hearing, and he used my room as like a test site. So I remember just like walking by my room like with like the door closed and hearing Living La Vida Loca very briefly. But he would also play like Metallica and like other things.
I was about to say, how did the plants react to Nookie by Limp Bizkit? That's why I got an F in science.
And Godspeed You Black Emperor, like he's just like just all sorts of
plants
different
are just
variants.
like, how long is this fucking song? God, we'll grow if you just speed it up.
I love Godspeed, but that would be funny if the plant's like, I'm done, and they're just like, we're not even halfway through the album yet.
Oh my God, really? Buena Vista Social Club follows renowned guitarist Ry Cooder and his son Joaquim as they travel to Cuba and assemble a group of the country's finest musicians to record an album. The performances are shown and the musicians are interviewed throughout. Eventually, they travel to the United States to perform. Directed by Wim Wenders, prior to this, Paris, Texas in 1984, Wings of Desire in 1987, Until the End of Time in 1991. After this, $1 Million Hotel in 2000, and Pina in 2011.
Is that his last big one? Pina was a pretty big deal.
Well, he's had movies with like big casts. Like there was that movie Everything Will Be Fine with James Franco and Rachel McAdams, which was like shot in 3D and apparently it's just like absolutely wretched.
Oh my goodness!
He did a spy thriller romance, I think, with Alicia Vikander and James McAvoy called Submergence, which I've heard is also bad. He's like one of those guys. I think you can watch it on Tubi.
Of course,
it's one of those guys who like it seems like he's really fallen off in like recent years critically. Except Pina, I heard was good, and his Pope Francis documentary, which is the last film he made, that's 82% in Rotten Tomatoes. I think I know one person who has seen it, and that is it.
Okay,
but yeah.
Until the End of the World also got a big re-release for the director's cut, which I saw the entire, 5.5 hour cut of that movie. A movie I deeply respect and deeply admire that I wish I enjoyed more. And I also saw it in theaters, and I don't think my ass has ever been more sore getting out of a seat at a theater.
Yeah, I watched that. I watched that thankfully at home. Yeah. Like I feel pretty much the same way. I wonder if like the edited version, do they even put out the edited version? Like the Criterion, does that have like the 2.5 hour cut?
I don't know. I'm sure you could watch it somewhere on like,
a
pirate website, because that was for a long time that was the only one that was available. I think it like they ever had like just rep screenings of the director's cut, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's like 5 different. I remember like every few years he'd be like, this new director's cut had 10 more minutes, and then the next time he'd be like, he added another 10 minutes. It's like,
I have a friend who's seen that in theaters, just in theaters, and also owns the Criterion. I think he saw it like 4 or 5 times in theaters, and I don't know how he did it. I'm like, I wish I liked it that much. I really do, but oh my god, once was good for me for a few years.
That's like the film school version of like watching all the Marvel movies in 24 hours in a theater before the next one comes out, except it's just seeing a Wim Wenders movie 3 times.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I shouldn't talk because I've seen like the extended cut of Margaret like at least 10 to 15 times, but I don't know.
Well, that's only 3
you're
hours.
freaking lightweight watching a 3-hour movie. Try watching a 5.5 hour movie in a rep screening 3 times.
And Margaret's very light viewing. It's not emotionally devastating in any way, you know.
Yeah.
It's got E.T. in it. That's all I remember. Trivia. Wim Wenders got the idea to make this documentary when he was working with Rai on the score for The End of Violence in 1997, and Cooter started telling him about his involvement with these Cuban musicians. All the scenes in Havana were shot in 3 weeks. In 2020, the film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. And Bryden, did you have any other trivia facts for Buena Vista?
Well, I guess I had like, Wim Wenders and Ry Cooder have like known each other for a very long time. I mean, yeah, End of Violence is like one of their later collaborations, but they first they knew each other in the 70s, and Wenders wanted him to do the score for this movie called Hammett, which I think was like 82 is when that came out. But then like the studio didn't want him because they said, we don't need a guitarist, we need a composer. And then but then they got him for Paris, Texas, and Wenders says that was my own production. Nobody could tell me what to do or not to do. And I guess that makes sense because I think that movie was like a Fox release in like the US at least. But
right.
I mean, yeah, the Paris, Texas score, I mean, is absolutely incredible. The movie is not the same, I don't think, without it. It's like so haunting and like echoey and like just like the sliding guitar. Like that's the thing I feel like he's most famous for instrumentally. And it's, people have like talked about like how that's like influenced their music. Like U2 says that like influenced Joshua Tree and everything. If you listen to like Running to Stand Still, that sounds like Ry Cooder. It's incredible. They talked about how like some of the like in interviews how like some of the band members in the Buena Vista Social Club, which by the way I had to look up what that the origin of that name was. It was based off the name of like a club in the 40s, I guess in Cuba. That was like sort of paying tribute to that. But some of the band members were like, yeah, they were like success. They had like some sort of local success, but then like some of them, like the one guy, Ibrahim Ferrer, he was like a shoe shiner and he sold lottery tickets, and then he was just like recruited because like someone wanted like a soft voice for like a melody, and someone was like, "Oh, I know a guy who can do that," and then they brought him out, and then it was like totally perfect. And then they also talked about how electricity was kind of hard to come by. Like sometimes the power would go out, and then they started problem solving by shooting people outdoors, so that like they could get more natural light rather than just like, fuck, okay, the power's out, we gotta like wait for like the power to come back on so we can have light inside. So that's why like you have scenes where like people are being interviewed on like park benches or out on their balconies or whatnot, which I think is really cool, and I like a lot of those interview scenes. What else? Wenders also talks about how like the movie doesn't really address politics because that was like for the sake of the performers. He says they made it clear on private that they would appreciate if we left politics out of the equation. It could have made life hard for them.
There's that opening scene where they talk about Fidel Castro, I think, and that's about it. But it was like them playing golf or something.
Yes, and it was like, I have the quote here. It was Che let him win. That's like the quote that the one person gives. Yeah. And then Wenders also brought in his regular DP, Robbie Mueller, who shot Paris, Texas, and The American Friend, and some of his other movies. He brought him in to shoot the concert footage for when they were in Amsterdam, which is what I think we're seeing for most of the movie. Yeah, and it's also funny. I'm looking here when they're talking about like how they got the Carnegie Hall performance. I think Vendors says like somebody at the State Department had pulled some strings. Mind you, that was still the Clinton presidency and made those visas possible. And it's kind of funny when they go to New York at the end of the movie, they linger on a shot of the Bill Clinton bobblehead or something like that. And they say like, who is that guy? And it's like him holding a saxophone or something.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and then in the later retrospective interview, they talk about how like, you know, I think they talk about how like visas are like made complicated because of like Trump's presidency and whatnot, and like, you know, trade in like Cuba, and yeah, and also they talk about how like a lot of the members like a lot of them are not alive anymore because I mean the one guy they interviewed, they say he was born in like 1917, so it's like, wait, so you're like 90 years old when you're performing, but like they're very spry when they're performing, so it's you don't think about their age really all that much until like they bring it up and you're like, wow, that's impressive.
And they've also been, most of them have been smoking and drinking for most of their lives, as they've also said, which was also kind of insane to think
stage,
about.
Yeah.
But
yeah. One other thing that I thought was funny was one of the people who gets talked about a bunch is Nick Gold, who was like the owner of a record label called World Circuit Records. That was, he was the CEO, and they were based in London, and they specialized in world music, and that's how he kind of like gets involved in all these Cuban musicians. And Cooter knew him because he did music with someone named Ali Farka Touré, and I know that name because they did a song called "I Do," which plays in the dance scene between Diane Lane and Olivier Martinez in "Unfaithful," the Adrian Lane.
Oh, wow.
No shit!
Yeah,
wow.
Good song. But yeah, I was just like thinking, why do I know that name? And I'm like, yes, it's that guy. But yeah, I thought that was funny.
When are we doing a pod about Unfaithful? That'd be fun as fuck.
That would be awesome. I just watched that movie for the first time this year. That movie rules.
Yeah,
Probably my favorite Adrian line.
Oh yeah, easily.
Jacob's Ladder for me. That's what
Oh yeah. Never mind. Yeah.
I'm still Team Unfaithful over here, waving my flag, my Diane Lane flag.
It'd be wild if I was just like, I don't know, the remake of Lolita, guys. Have you fuckers seen Foxes? Come on, you can't say that without seeing Foxes. Yeah.
I liked Deepwater.
I need to see that. I really need to see that.
It's fun. Yeah. Kevin does not agree with me.
No. Anyways, Buena Vista.
Hi, I'm Ry Cooter. I discovered the joys of Cuban music many years ago. But it was only recently that I learned just how many of the long forgotten, yet legendary Cuban musicians were still alive and well.
From Vim Vendors, director of Wings of Desire in Paris, Texas, comes the story of an American musician who went searching for the sounds of an island and discovered the soul of a people. Artisan Entertainment presents the Buena Vista Social Club. They were part of a wonderful tradition that was just waiting to be rediscovered.
Let's initial thoughts, Brian. What did you think about Buena Vista Social Club? I thought they named it Buena Vista because they were a big fan of Disney, but I guess not. That's what
they just open the concert playing like the Walt Disney logo studio theme or something.
Oh boy.
Got the flute player.
Yeah, so I liked this actually pretty well, which is funny because I'm not familiar with a lot of this. I'm not familiar with any of this music except Ry Cooter, who like my mom actually had one of his albums when I was growing up called "Bop Till You Drop."
Excuse me?
Yeah, and I liked one of his songs. I think it's the song is called like I Think It's Gonna Work Out Fine, where it's just like him like strumming on the guitar, and it's like got this very melancholy sort of like moaning like guitar sound, with like just like completely. It's like you don't need words at all. It's just like. I mean, if you know the Paris, Texas score and any of the other scores that Ry Cooter has done, I mean, he's not done scores just for Vim Vendors, but also like Walter Hill, Wong Kar-wai, a bunch of other people. Great composer. Love his music. Would love to dive into it more deeply, but not knowing about this music, it's like I was worried, like thinking, oh, am I going to be kind of like struggling to get engaged in this because it's not necessarily I'm familiar with, but I think Vendors actually does a pretty good job of like shooting the concert footage dynamically and really conveying the closeness of the dynamic between these musicians. I don't think a lot of them knew each other. They talk about that, but then like they all like kind of snapped into focus as like as a group, like pretty quickly into their pretty quickly into the recording process, and you really get that chemistry in like the performances. Like there's one bit where like a drummer is like going on this crazy solo and everything, and like it cuts to Ry Cooder at one point. He goes like, "Oh!" Like he's just sort of like very impressed by like this guy just like getting wrapped up in it, and they're very generous with each other too, and like letting each other like pull focus. And I think Vendors too is generous and having affection for all the performers. And he talks about that in interviews, how like he loves all the band players and the supporting people who are helping with the music, and you really get that sense with like, they all feel like they're kind of in conversation with each other. Like at one point they're cutting between Ry Cooder and one of the other musicians, and the reverse shot, it's all matches up like with the rhythm of the music. And it's like they're almost conversing with each other musically. And, that's like how they're able to like connect throughout the movie. There's like a lot of, because some of them don't speak the same language. And there's one scene where Ry Cooder has to like express his affection for Ibrahim Ferrer through a translator. And it's very moving, but like it is kind of funny how like music, trite as it might sound, is like sort of like it has no barriers linguistically. And that's how they're able to like, find friendship and kinship with each other. And yeah, I don't know. I think Vendors actually brings like a lot of good visual sense in ways that I almost didn't expect. Like, it's the kind of direction where I'm watching it and I'm thinking, oh, why is he holding on a shot of this one guy holding a cigar in his hand rather, and then like the camera like pulls back as the guy starts telling the story. It's like, well, I was very close with my grandmother and I would light her cigars for her and everything, and he talked about how important it was and how she wouldn't leave Cuba, I think. And then he says, so you could say I've been smoking for 88 years because I would help like light her cigars or whatever. And it's like, oh, like that's actually kind of lovely that like, Vendors like draws attention to that. And then it's like his visual sense sort of like signaling you to like what is about to like become important or whatever through the dialogue that's being had. I don't know. So I liked it. And I like a lot of the songs. Like I said, like the performers like bring just like so much energy. They seem to have like so much fun performing with each other. I think Ibrahim Ferrer is like a very charming figure throughout the movie. Like the way he's just sort of, and like when he's dancing with the one woman, like they're like slow dancing to the music. It's just like, I don't know. I thought this was actually very lovely. Yeah, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it and how much I found, even though it's a subject I don't know a whole lot about, I found like Vendor's direction and the music were like actually like quite. I felt like his direction enlivened the music, which is also very lively in itself. I'll now defer to whoever next wants to go.
Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much same thing. Not familiar with this music at all, but and it's not like. It's not like anything that appeals to me and my taste specifically, but I think as a cultural document, it is like a very important piece of filmmaking. And I agree with Bryden. I like all the little moments. I think it's Ibrahim Ferrer who has the statue that they like leave rum for underneath every day.
And perfume. He gives it like perfume too.
Perfume. Yeah. I liked all those moments. There was that one guy too who was like 90 and he's like, I have 5 kids, but I still want another one. And I'm like, oh my God.
Sir.
Like, relax. Yeah. I'm like, how much of this person's life will you be in before? Yeah. But anyway, I agree. I mean, I am like you, Bryden. I've seen a few music documentaries. It's not exactly something I'm well versed in. So in terms of like, just in terms of my knowledge of how to critique something like this, I feel like I'm pretty much just taking in what I can upon the viewing. And I don't really have a lot of entirely insightful things, as it's not a genre both in terms of like filmmaking and music that I'm extremely well versed in. But yeah, I mean it's good. It's very good, and I'm glad that it exists. I think didn't it just get a Criterion re-release?
Yeah, it's on the channel, and the channel has like, I didn't get to it because unfortunately I didn't leave myself enough time. But there's like so many like radio interviews and like long featurettes, like including like Spanish television interviews with like some of the band members, which is lovely because like I said, a lot of them like languish in obscurity for like many years before this thing sort of brought them back into the limelight, which is pretty nice. I think it's quite touching.
And we were talking about how like I did have some like, I didn't love the cinematography at first, and before we started recording, both of you mentioned like, well, yeah, that was all they could like get at the time. It did this, kind of low budget digital thing. So now I'm just kind of like, okay, I was being too critical of that when I was watching it, because I am used to, honestly, the stuff I have seen, like Stop Making Sense, is like even more dynamic, but that's not entirely fair because, you know, it's the budget they had in order to get that stuff into Cuba to begin with. So yeah, it's good. It's, again, not necessarily for me, but that's okay. Not every movie has to be for me, and I think I'm just glad it exists. So.
No, I'm a white male, and every movie needs to cater to my needs. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Jesus, I'm sorry if that's how it came out. Like,
Yeah,
no, that's just me saying it. Charlie, you're safe.
When the one musician says he was studied every genre, you were like saying, "Well, why don't you play some new metal then?"
Yeah, there was a supreme lack of Jonathan Davis in this documentary, so it kind of tuned out. I pretty much echo Charlie. I thought it was fine. I'm very unfamiliar with Cuban music, but this documentary didn't exactly have the kind of power or anything, or maybe it's just no matter what, it wouldn't have been like, oh shit, I should really check some of this out. It's just not my type of music, and that's fine. I like new metal, so what do I know? Yeah, it's just fine. It kind of, the thing with music docs that are like this, where it's like part concert and then part documentary, which are the Motown documentary we're going to talk about, does the same thing, where it's just like one part of that is going to be more interesting than the other, at least for me, where I'm just like, oh, I'd love to see the performances. Oh, we have to do the shit where they're talking about blah blah blah. And with this one, the performances were good, but then about halfway through it, it just felt kind of samey for me. And of course, it's just personal, nothing against them. They're fantastic musicians, just not for me. And then it would go back to the documentary part of it, and then I don't know. It just didn't feel as maybe dynamic is the word, but I honestly don't think it was going for something like that. It's more so it's a chill type of music, and the documentary portions of it are very chill as well. And I also watched it like 3 days into having COVID, so maybe that influenced how I was, type of way. I just wanted to watch Coneheads and Wayne's World instead. But yeah, it's the type of thing, if you're in this type of music, you're probably gonna love it. If you're not, or if you're a Vim Vendors head, if you're really into the 2010 movies Bryden said that don't exist, check it out, I guess. But a lot of people love it, so it's just a personal, it's fine for me. I can't really recommend it or not recommend it because it's just not for me. But it's got some interesting stuff. I do like the video shot on it. I love anything shot on digital video. But yeah, I definitely like it a bit more than the Motown one, which I have a lot more that I can say about that. But yeah.
I'm going to get into that too. I mean, it is wild how that movie, like these movies are kind of perfect for each other, like showing like, okay, this is why this is a good music documentary, and why the other is not. Where like the other one, I'm like, why am I not just like reading a book or like an article about this?
Right. Yeah. We'll get into it.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say that, being that it's a documentary, there's not exactly a plot to get into other than they go to Cuba, they talk to the members of it, we see them performing, and then they go to the United States, and then they perform. There's not exactly a plot that I need to get into. But
I think the performance that we're seeing, like, we're intercutting between in Cuba. We're cutting between the rehearsals in Cuba and then, like, the performance in Amsterdam. That's where they first went. And then they Carnegie Hall is, like, the big U.S. gig that they get. And that's what we see a little bit of at the end, as well as them, like, touring the city a little bit and just sort of taking that all in. I will agree with you, Kevin, that I do think like the structure of the movie is like a little, once you get sort of like into the rhythm of it, it is like a little samey, where it's like there'll be like an interview and then a performance, and then whatever performer the song ends on, like in terms of like the camera, who it's looking at, it's like, oh, we're about to like get like an interview with them and like their life story or whatever, and then like they'll like give a little bit of like their background, and then they like you'll sort of pretty smoothly, I would say, segue into like, the song and everything. Like at one point, this is not actually quite lining up with the structure and everything, but it's a lot of like, Ibrahim Ferrer at one point talks about like, oh, like this is how I came up with like, a particular bass melody, like, just sort of like on the spot when I was just like sort of casually walking around, and then he starts humming it, and then like the actual bass line starts coming up, and then we cut into the performance, and it's like, oh, that's like a pretty cool transition, sort of like showing how it's like starts with this bare bones idea and then goes into the concert footage. But once you get into like, interview, concert, interview, concert, interview, concert, interview, concert, like that sort of like structure. It's like you do maybe like start like I can understand maybe someone shifting into seat being like, okay, so like, you know, but no, I mean I think it's like engagingly. I like all of the subjects being interviewed. I think they're all like very dynamic interviewers. I think they're all like they all like still have like a great sense of humor in their lives. Like there's like the one bit where like it's the guys playing dominoes with each other, and the one guy like outstretches his arms, just like I've trounced you and whatnot. And it's like very funny just to see them like I don't know. I think there's like a great sense of vibrancy and community warmth in the movie. Like when the movie's just like sort of following them as like they're follows the one woman as she's walking down the street, and then she starts singing, and then other people start joining in. It's like there's like so much sense of love and like the way this music is like being shared amongst people here, and I thought that was really lovely. But I can understand maybe being a little shifty pacing wise, for sure. I
don't have much else to say.
Yeah, I mean, let me see if I can talk about other things, because I do have like so many fucking notes. It's just my thing is I watched this movie like 2 weeks ago, and obviously things got delayed. No problem. Life happens, but it's just like I
had an emergency.
Yes. Brian was so pissed that I had COVID. He was like, "I'm ready to talk about this. You ingrate. Fucking."
Yeah, I'm not like bringing it up like as like probably salt on wounds. I hope that doesn't come off that way. But it's
no.
I wrote my notes by hand, so like it's easier for me to like focus. But like my handwriting when I'm taking notes and trying to keep up with the movie is absolute dog shit. So it's like chicken scratch handwriting. So if I'm struggling to find stuff to say, it's because I can't read my own handwriting from 2 weeks ago and my foggy memory.
I haven't taken notes on a movie we've done in a while. I do it on ones that I see that Wikipedia doesn't really have a description, or if I know it's going to be bad shit and I need to note every single moment that's going to happen. I think the last one I did that for is Strangeland, a masterpiece. So yeah, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I liked there's like one song where I think it's, again, I keep going back to Ibrahim Ferrer. I guess I took a lot of notes on his stuff because I found it really interesting.
He's pretty front and center for, I'd say he gets the most amount of screen time.
I think he's the one on the poster. I mean, like he's facing, he's like walking away from the camera, but like he's in the poster, I think. And it's, you understand why, because like he's a very charismatic fellow, and like, but there's like a sweet bit where he's talking about how like he was an orphan and everything. Like I think he lost his parents when he was like very young and everything, but then
that was a moving story he told.
Yeah, but then he's like, there's like someone like talking about how he's alone in life, but then it's contrasted where he's like walking with a woman who I think we learn is like his wife and everything. It's like showing like, how like these guys, like even though like some of them come from like hard scrabble lives and everything, like they do like have like they are happy and everything. And he talks about too like how he would do like just like kind of odd jobs to sort of make a living. And he's like, but I'm not ashamed of it. Like it's like you just make a living and whatnot. And I think the movie has like a very accepting attitude of like towards all of that. And
I liked the story about the piano player who had the blind instructor who always got impatient with them, and then they'd pretend that they weren't there, so he wouldn't go after them because they could just be like, well, we just hide, like.
And I love how that guy's introduced when he gets like his own sort of like minute in the spotlight and everything, where like the camera's like gliding sort of through this like dance hall, like going up the stairs, and then like the camera moves and like he's like got this little piano just like off in the corner and everything. And it's like kind of like underlining how this guy is like, even though he's like, just like incredibly talented, like you see him like hitting these notes and like the music is so loud, but his fingers are like just moving so delicately and everything. It's like it's beautiful. Right. But then like it's like he's like playing music for like dance classes and gymnastics and everything, so he's just like it's kind of like
fencing classes too, I think, at one point.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like it's like the movie, like I think like framing him as like sort of off to the side is like like look at this guy, like he's like got this like amazing talent, but he's like people just like don't know about it until like like this whole project comes together. So it gets, I don't know, I think again that's like me talking like trying to like make a point of like how I think Wenders does a very good job of like bringing like visual senses or like make his subjects pop, just like as a movie.
On a selfish note, it made me wish I was more musically talented than I was. I was terrible and trying to, they were all like, I learned when I was 11 or 17, and I was just like, I had a really mean piano teacher named Polly that made me not want to play piano anymore. I
bet none of these motherfuckers could beat me in Guitar Hero, so I'd like to see them try. So that's all.
Just imagining. Which song would you pick? Welcome Home?
No, Through the Fire and Flames. And I'd be like, oh, I thought you were so gifted. You've been playing since 10 and you don't, okay, all right. You don't know how to do hammer-ons. That's fine, man.
It's the kind of thing where like, I don't know how much of this music the songs off the actual soundtrack I'm going to like listen to. Like, I don't know if this is something I would want to buy, but it just speaks to like how, is that especially when we're talking about like documentaries, it's not just like the subject, it's also like the form, like how are they conveying it. And it shows like even if it's not a subject that I find the most interesting thing in the world, it's like if the movie is able to make it interesting, I'm gonna chalk that up at least to like the director giving a shit about how the movie looks and how it's like cut together. And I think Vendors does like a pretty good job, all in all. And yeah, and I don't know. I also find like all the performers like very engaging, but yeah, and like I said, they're all very generous with each other. Like when they're like in rehearsal, there's like one point where, you know, Rycooter and like some other people are just like tuning up their guitars and anything, but then they just sort of like stop and the camera like pans over as like their attention and like the camera's attention is just drawn to like some other performer. They're just like completely enraptured by it, and it's like, oh yeah, like the movie really is giving you the sense of why these people of how these people find each other so impressive and everything. I don't know. Speaking for myself, I found it impressive too. Yeah. Oh, just the one guy who like is playing the lute and he like does it backwards.
Oh, that was the best part. Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, yeah, like he has someone else he has someone else like propping it up for him and everything, but it's like, holy shit, like how is he even able to do that? Like that definitely takes practice, like to be able to like play that behind your back. That's incredible. Yeah, so many cool like show-stopping stunts like that in the movie. Or not so many, but that's one of the cool things in the movie.
Right.
But it's nice that like all these guys like got like a pretty good careers afterwards. I know like some of them, a lot of them are not with us anymore, but like you know, they got like got like a Grammy, I think, for what was it? What was the award that it won? It won several awards, including a Grammy Award for the Best Tropical Latin Album in 1998. And then, you know, this movie. Also, this is kind of funny. I don't know if we've checked this. How many of the movies that we've talked about have gotten Oscar nominations for this miniseries? Because this movie got nominated for Oscars too. I mean, Requiem for a Dream, I guess, got some acting nominations.
Right.
Yeah, Ellen Burstyn got nominated.
What did Ringmaster? What did they get nominated for? Wasn't that like best cinematography? I'm trying to.
Wait, House of the Dead didn't win Best Picture that year?
Yeah, I know. That's when I knew the Oscars was rigged.
What won in 2003? Like, what movie? Come on, what movie in 2003? Oh, it was Lord of the Rings.
Oh. Oh. That's bullshit politics. It should have been Uwe Boll up there. I don't think any other ones. Let me pull up real quick. Besides Requiem for a Dream.
Nothing for The Limey, which is one of the movies I really like.
I mean, it should have been editing for The Limey, but...
Where was the nom for Boat Trip? What the fuck? I think that's honestly...
I think the Banana won Best Supporting Actor in that movie.
That's true. That's true.
That was also 2003. Jesus Christ.
Good times. Good times.
Who is that? Tim Robbins from Mystic River, I think?
I think you're right. Yeah. But yeah, no, I just thought that was kind of a noteworthy thing to mention. It's like, yeah, like I don't think we've done a lot of like prestige movies or like movies that like got that kind of like prestigious accolades and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, I'd say like not including Oscar nominations. I mean, Blair Witch is probably like the best reviewed movie we've covered.
That's probably true.
And the next one we are going to cover is Standing in the Shadows of Motown from 2002. This premiered at Tribeca in May 2002 and opened in the U.S. November 15th, 2002. Opening weekend of $114,000. Opened in 23 theaters, maxed out at 59 theaters. Budget, I couldn't find it. The U.S. plus overall gross was $1.6 million. Top 5 films that weekend was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, 8 Mile, The Santa Claus 2, The Ring, and Half Past Dead.
Wow.
Half Past Dead, number 5.
Half Past Dead, is that the fucking...
That's the Ja Rule, yeah.
Steven Seagal, Morris Chestnut, I believe.
Yeah.
But Steven Seagal was a Russian, which Ebert made fun of a lot in his review, like saying, like, well, I think they played like the clip on Ebert and Rope. He was like, "Now, did you even hear him attempting a Russian accent in that scene? I don't think I even heard a trace." Yeah,
he could barely do his own voice, let alone Russian. Jesus.
Do you think any theater accidentally started playing The Ring instead of Harry Potter for?
Oh, that would rule.
Because the first scene of The Ring is horrifying on its own. So.
I guess they're like having American students come over to Hogwarts now. I guess people would be watching The Ring. It's like,
well, they are dressed up in uniforms, I guess. Like
they're just like, I didn't know Amber Tamblyn was in Hogwarts. What's going on here? It's Amber Tamblyn, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
okay.
It is.
Okay.
And what's her name? Who was married to Edward Furlong?
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Rachel Bella.
Rachel Bella.
Who, yeah, very sad relationship that she had with Edward Furlong. It is dark, if you were to look into that.
Half Past Dead. Anyways.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, right?
Oh, man. I haven't seen Santa Claus 2 or Half Past Dead. I think I'm going to keep it that way. But
yeah, same. What's the colon for Santa Claus 2? Is that Mrs. Claus?
I have no idea what Santa Claus 2 is about. I think the third one is the one with Martin Short, right?
Yep, as Jack Frost. Didn't see it.
That's funny. Number one song in the U.S. that weekend is Lose Yourself by Eminem, of course. Number one song in Canada that weekend was Electrical Storm by U2. What the fuck is that?
I don't know that one.
I have not gotten into the later decades of U2. I feel like the 80s is maybe where I should say. But,
yeah.
Do you remember the song they did for the Tomb Raider movie?
No.
Elevation. It's so bad.
Oh, God.
It's so bad.
Pretty much anything after Actung Baby, you're good. You're good on skipping. But also the number one song in Canada like a few months before, because of Spider-Man, they had Hero for like 6 weeks in a row was number one. So Canada was making us proud.
That's Nickelback, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. Chad Kroger and Saliva guy. Yeah.
It's like Spider-Man slinging through New York, and they're just on like, I don't know, a building as that's going on.
They're watching him. Yeah. Joey Scott and Chad Kroger.
As he flies away.
Yeah. Great song. Standing in the Shadows of Motown follows the Funk Brothers, a group of Detroit musicians who backed up dozens of Motown artists. The documentary brings together the surviving members of the Funk Brothers to bring the group out of anonymity and give them their proper credit, and has them perform with the lights of Bootsy Collins, Chaka Khan, and Joan Osborne. This was directed by Paul Justman. Prior to this, two narrative films, Rock and Roll Hotel in 1983, Give Me an F in 1984. And he also did some music videos for Jay Giles Band, including the music video for Centerfold, The Cars, and Rick Springfield. After this, nothing. I could not find anything about him after this documentary. This is based on the book of the same name by Alan Sletsky. And I looked at it. The DVD for this is a 2-disc DVD. There's a separate DVD with special features. There's nothing of note on there besides, nothing behind the scenes-ish. There is a commentary, which I couldn't get to work. And then the rest of it is like more jam sessions and stuff like that. So I have no trivia whatsoever, unfortunately.
It's the height of creativity.
People will ask, well, what is the Motown sound? Okay, it was the musicians.
In the small confines of Studio A, myself and the rest of the musicians didn't realize what an impact we'd have on the rest of the world.
Without them, there really wouldn't be a Motown.
This is the spot where a whole lot of stuff happens.
I managed to kick the amplifier. It's one of these old amps, and it kicked, and it...
He could hear another time in his head and be playing cut time against what you're playing, and it would fit. It wasn't about no color or nothing, man. They just loved his musician. All the cats in the hood, man, that's bad.
They called us the Oreo cookie guitar section because Robert White sat to my right and Eddie Willis sat to my left, and the white boy.
Artisan Entertainment invites you to meet the unheralded heroes of Motown. Hear the untold stories and journey to the heart of America's soul.
I'll be searching everywhere just to find someone me.
Standing in the shadows of Motown.
I'll go first. This was not that good. I've seen a documentary called Hitsville from about 2 years ago, which is also about Motown. I think it was a Showtime documentary, which has Berry Gordy and a bunch of other people from Motown, and actually has the songs in it, like the original songs, and makes you, while you're watching it, be like, oh yeah, that was a great song. That's a great song, because they hype it up, and it makes you realize, even if you don't know the songs, how important they are and everything like that. And instead, in this one, you might get some original songs in it, but they will play like 3 seconds, and then it'll just be somebody being like, man, that song, right? And then it'll just go into a performance of it with somebody of the time, like a Joan Osborne, which is pretty wild. But yeah, and then the reenactments, but then also the reenactments are annoying, and the documentary part of it just doesn't. I mean, it doesn't bring out the like where you watch it and you're just like, God damn, like these songs are incredible. It's just like, yeah, remember that time we were recording? Yeah, all right, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, there's just if you're wanting to learn about Motown, which you should because it's amazing stuff, definitely watch Hitsville instead. There's a lot of great footage in there and actually goes behind all the songs and why they're amazing and all of that type of stuff. And I really don't think you're going to get that with here, other than you're going to get a bunch of performances with the Funk Brothers in the current day, but with a bunch of other people performing. And I feel like it's more performances than documentary in this movie, but maybe it's just because the performances did less for me than in Buena Vista. But yeah, not that good. Don't check it out. Check out Hitsville. Hitsville's a good time. But Bryden, what'd you think?
Yeah, I thought this was pretty boring, which is sad because I don't think I've done like a lot of deep dives into Motown music besides like listening to like compilations and like, you know, select songs from like albums throughout the years. If I've heard it in like a movie or TV show, it's lazy for me. But I mean, I like a lot of this music that they play throughout the movie, like "Ooh Baby Baby" by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, "Nowhere to Run" by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. But like, yeah, I mean, the movie opens with like it's based on a book and everything, and then like very quickly I realized like I feel like I could just be reading the book about this. I feel like you'd have more cooler anecdotes like that you could keep in. I feel like you'd just be giving me the stories and it'd be well written, and you wouldn't have like this very boring flat visual palette where like it is like just, especially the performances, it takes up so much of the movie. And like, look, at least they sing the whole songs. You know, sometimes you see movies where like they play like just like snatches of the song and it feels like, you know, kind of they're shortchanging you. They play the whole songs, but the songs not only are, I honestly wasn't a fan of like a lot of the covers. They seemed kind of just flat bland to me. But it's like also just like there's not a whole lot of intentionality with like, you know, how it's like cut together, where it'll be like there'll be a close up, and then it will pan, and then it will zoom out, and it will zoom back in or something like that. It's just like, and some of the shots like you'll be like cutting like 3 times in like less than 5 seconds or whatever, and it's just like it just becomes very boring to watch. And like whatever performance would start up, I'd be like, oh gosh, like I'm not into this. And then I
was telling you before, it feels like a VH1 storytellers document, like where it'd just be like an hour on TV and you would just watch it because nothing else is on type of thing. Because it's just like, oh, these songs are so great. Oh, somebody else is going to perform them. Which, I mean, of the thing, it's just like, yeah, that's a nifty idea. And, you know, some of these artists are not alive anymore or not up to snuff anymore, which is understandable. But I mean, like, they get somebody like Shaka Khan, and every time that she performed was fucking great. And Bootsy Collins was cool. And then it's just like, oh, yeah, get What If God Was One of Us lady Joan Osborne, which is cool, and she's a really good singer. But I'm just like, but I want to hear the original songs.
Yeah, she just kind of like lightly swings her arms from side to side as she's singing. I'm like, this is not super dynamic. The one kind of cool performance I just looked at my notes is when like I think it's when they're performing something called Shotgun. I think that's what they're performing. But like the singer, the saxophonist, and the tambourine player all start leaning in towards each other as the song sort of heats up. And like it's like, oh, like there's like some liveliness here, but it's all in just the performer. It's like how like they're engaging with each other, nothing with the film. And it's like, one, I don't like. There's like so many reasons why this movie doesn't need to exist. One, I could read the book for the stories, and for the music, I could just listen to the album on Spotify or on YouTube for free. Like, it's, why am I here watching the movie? It's like it really. I don't need to be. You don't need to be.
It feels like an advertisement. It feels like an advertisement for an album, and it's just like It feels like an infomercial you'd see at 3 a.m. where it's just like, oh, it's got this song and this song. Oh yeah, I should get that album.
You can get it for 4 easy installments of $19.99. Yeah, like
easy. I don't know about that.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of similar to Buena Vista Social Club. It is like nice that they're trying to give attention to musicians, especially there's that early scene where they're asking like, oh, do you know who did this song and everything? And it's like, yes, of course I know who did this song. I know like what Motown is. I'm from Detroit. And they say, oh, do you know who played like the guitars or whatever? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's like a worthwhile question I never asked myself. And then like, you know, and it's nice that they're giving them their moment in the sun, but like it's again like the movie doesn't how they're showing them in like the positions of this world, it's like I don't think like compared to One of Us, a Social Club, I don't think like the
right. It's trying to position it like they're interviewing these people, and it's just like, you dumbass, you don't even know who played guitar on this. It was just like the Funk Brothers were session players. They weren't big because they were just session players. Like, they're incredible musicians, but it's not like, because the cover of it, and they say a few times, it's like they've produced more hits than the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Beach Boys combined, and it's just like, and nobody knows their name. It's like, because they were session players. It's like they weren't out here like, nobody was like, this song by the Funk Brothers. It's like, yeah, it's just like, that's as to say, it's just like, hey, you love this rap song, but who produced it? And it's like, yeah, most people are not going to know because they're the producer. It's like, it's not like it was just like, oh, Foxy Lady, do you know who performed this? It's like, yeah, it's Jimi Hendrix. It's like, okay, but you know who the engineer was? No, you don't. And it's just like, well, okay.
I mean, thinking of it like,
it is a little condescending. Yeah, when you think about it that way.
I mean, film-wise, I guess, like, it makes me think of, like, when you're complimenting, like, a shot in a movie, it's like, well, like, yes, the director, they do get props for it, but also, like, do you know who, like, the cinematographer is or anything? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like, I sometimes get...
Do you know who the best boy is, you piece of shit?
that I'm not quite as deep on, but, like, yeah, I mean, the movie does also, like, portray, like, the sort of, like, leading questions where it's, like, the background music is playing as they're asking them the questions, but then it's, like, do you know who did the guitar? And it's, like, the music stops, and then they don't know how to answer. It's, like, pretty accurate.
I'm just imagining... You just get contentious with the movie, just instantly combative. You know what I do know? I couldn't get married until 8 years ago, and I still can't give blood today. That's what I fucking know. Just start, like, getting, like, combative.
Sir, we were just asking you about the guitarist. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just like they're amazing musicians, but it's like, yeah, nobody knows about them because they were never out in front of anything. It's just like, oh, you know Stevie Wonder, but you don't know the Funk Brothers? It's like, yeah. He's fucking Stevie Wonder. It's just like, nothing against the guys, but it's just like, yeah, they're producers. They're amazing at it, but it's just like, it tries to make it like the people who know who they are so much better than the people who don't know. It's just like, all right, let's get out of here.
I have pretty much nothing to add, and I'm just in agreement with all of you, and it was very hard. I was going through a lot when I watched this 2 weeks ago. It was a really hectic day, so I had a hard time focusing on it. And then the stuff I did pay attention to was, I mean, like, we brought up the reenactments, which just took me out of it, where I was just like, wait, what? And they're not well shot.
No.
It's like, all of a sudden, it's like, wait, we're doing an Errol Morris thing now? Like, what? Why?
And it'll be for, like, oh, this guy had gross eating habits on car trips. I'm like, I don't know if I need to see that.
Yeah, why?
And it's not like, you know, those kind of digressions, like, I mean, if this was like a narrative film and like you were like telling the story of a band and everything, I'm like, oh, that might be like a fun digression. It's like a little scene, but it feels weird that they devote all the time. It's like, okay, we gotta hire actors to play these band members. We gotta get these lighting setups. We gotta like get a car. We gotta like go to this location. It's like
for the most like basic scenes, like
yeah, it's not necessary.
This is pretty harsh, but it does kind of feel like the. Okay, kids, your music teacher drank too much last night and didn't have enough water, so she called out of work today. We're just gonna watch this in class. Like, you know, like...
Yeah, and... I also wanted to mention Andre Braugher does the narration. You know, Andre Braugher, who was on Homicide: Life on the Street, and was on Brooklyn Nine-Nine as Captain Holt. Very good actor. Doesn't bring a lot to the narration. He's just kind of like, you know... It's pleasantly boring narration, I guess, just where he's just like, he doesn't really bring a lot of intonation to it. He's just sort of like saying, well, the Funk Brothers did this, and it's like, okay, yep, I feel like I'm listening to an audiobook. It's not that not that interesting. Maybe he was, because this, like we said, based on a book. And like, again, good songs, like great songs, but how they're used throughout the movie are pretty hacky and everything. Like when they're talking about "Ooh Baby Baby," it's like talking about how like the Funk Brothers were missing the glory and whatnot. And it's like, I don't think that's like the right song choice. Like that sounds about like cheating on your girlfriend or something. I don't think that's like quite the right choice.
You kind of, and this is bad because we were doing this beforehand, but you do kind of want Beavis and Butthead to be like narrating why this is a badly made documentary.
Oh, like, I would love that for everything. Yeah, that'd be great.
Just them being like. We know that, dude. You know, like, do you know who Stevie Wonder is? Yes.
Like, the Funk Brothers. Who are those fart knockers? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's like a shame because like this is like fairly interesting material, and I do.
It's interesting history, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and I think there is like a sense of melancholy to like some of the stories. Like the one guy they talk about who like he heard the opening riff of like My Girl, which he was responsible for, but then like as he started to talk about it, he like immediately shut himself down because he was like, well, no one's gonna believe me that I did that and whatnot, and it's like, oh, that is pretty sad. And then like, but it's. Again, the movie just like doesn't do anything interesting, and it just like does like so many things where like I guess they're trying to spice it up, but like the choices aren't interesting. Like some of the interview footage is in black and white, and I guess some of this footage is from a while ago because they cut to one guy who like it says like this is like from 1991 and this guy's passed away now. It's like, okay, so I guess like you were just shooting this like a long time ago or whatever, but like there's like I looked up one guy. It's like this is like in black and white footage, but like I looked him up. I'm like, this guy's still alive. Did you just like shoot this in black and white for no reason? I don't understand why.
Because it's cool.
There's a lot of point and shoot energy of just like, okay, they know how to set up a tripod and put a camera on it. Like, I guess, like.
Yeah. I don't know. It did make me want to. I mean, I downloaded a few of the songs, like again, like and put them on like a playlist, and was like, oh yeah, like I haven't listened to some of these songs in a while, and like that's very fun. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like the point I was trying to make with Buena Vista Social Club, like it doesn't matter how interested you are in the subject matter. It's like if the movie doesn't convey it interestingly, especially in a visual sense, like just there's no reason for this to be a movie. It could have just stayed a book, and it's like, I'm sure the book is good. Maybe there's like more interesting anecdotes there because like they probably had more room for it. But like there's just not a whole lot here. I mean, some of the music is fun, but yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not contributing a whole lot here, but like
you're contributing way more than me. I have mirroring everything you're saying and can't really add any more.
Yeah, it's just not much to say other than it's just like, yeah, this music is good. The documentary doesn't make me feel that way though. It's just like I definitely can't see somebody being like, what's Motown? And then somebody's being like, oh, you got to sit down and watch this documentary, and they'd be like, oh, so it's like old music. It wouldn't give them like be like, oh, this is still so great and all of that stuff. It would just be like, oh, okay, like not in the same way that other documentaries or anything like that would convey that. So it fails in that regard, I feel like. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.